right, welcome everybody. Welcome to another live stream. Let me know in the chat if you can hear the sound, if you hear the music. Shouldn't be too loud right now because I have it turned quite a ways down. But yeah, we can change that later on. And let me know if you can hear the voice and how everything is. Another live stream. Let me know in the chat if you can hear the sound, if you hear the music. There we go. Shouldn't be too loud. Turn down the volume of my quite a ways down. But yeah, we can change that later on. And let me know if you can hear the voice and how everything is. Cool. All right. Welcome everybody. Join us in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. Anything you'd like me to talk about. I've got some things I want to talk about today, but maybe there's some things that I didn't think about that you guys would like to talk about. So just let me know, and we can talk about all sorts of things today. Specifically wanted to talk about ADE, because obviously that was last week or this week. Yeah, I got back this week. The days get all mixed up, but yeah, want to talk a bit about the week, how it was, the events, the things that I played, the things that I went to see, artists that I saw that were particularly inspirational. Amsterdam, awesome city. We can talk about that as well. Go through a little bit the setup that I used, which we have right here. So we'll talk a little bit about this rig, which is exactly the setup that I used for the shows at ADE. The only thing that I don't have plugged in right now is the Ableton Move, which I did also use there as well. I can hook that up. Actually, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, so that's basically the rig. That's what we'll go over that in a little bit. Kind of how I used it. If you're interested in hearing the what are we hearing here? Big USB noise. I don't know if that goes away. I think the launch control is what does that actually when I do this. So let me know how that is, because I think that's the only thing that it could be coming from, if I'm not wrong. So definitely let me know. I could also, maybe if I try unplugging that, if that helps. Let me know how the noise is now. Because the other things are all unplugged. There's nothing plugged in here. Blackbox maybe? Not sure. Anyway, we can also make some adjustments here. That is not connected, so that shouldn't be a problem. Try turning that down just a bit. All right, let me know how that goes. All gone now? Okay, yeah. My guess is it's the launch control. I think I have a bad cable there. But anyway, we can, hopefully that fixed it so we don't have anything crazy. Yeah, so welcome back, or I should say I'm back, but welcome back for another stream. I didn't do one last weekend because I was in Amsterdam for the Amsterdam dance event. Yeah, it's a crazy event. If you've never been, it's the whole city of Amsterdam is kind of taken over by electronic music people, dance music people. There's a conference, there's chats, there's workshops and seminars, and there's about 1,000 different events over the course of 7 days. So it's crazy. 24 hours a day for 7 days. There's stuff going on. Every possible venue, from Gashuder, which is like the big, gigantic festival hall. There's the Dockyard Festival, which is an outdoor, massive thing as well, actually indoor and outdoor. All the way down to, every bar, restaurant, coffee shop, hotel lobby, everywhere has music. So it's quite an event. It's a ton of fun. I've been a few different years, and I missed it last year, so I was really excited to get back this year. And it was amazing and inspirational as always. I was fortunate enough to play a couple times. I played for a little demonstration on improvised live performance, gave a chat on that as well, which I did during the conference portion of it, for the people who make the books, the synthesizer books. They had me play at their little area in the lounge, which was cool. A little quick, 20-minute demo, and then a chat about improvised live performance with some people that were hanging out there, which was great. Then, what else? And then I played the Kitchen Club event on the Sunday night, which, if you're interested in listening to that, the recording of that whole live set is up on SoundCloud right now. So if you just go to SoundCloud and search Circo, you'll be able to find that. It was cool because I don't normally record my sets, partly because I always forget, and partly because I like the idea that you have to be there or you missed it. But they recorded this set, the people from the event, and sent me the file. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and do it then. So I posted it up, and just so you know, the first couple minutes, there's some noise, kind of like here. There's some clipping in that because they didn't quite have their levels right. But after that, they got it sorted out, and it sounds great after that. So that was like an hour. There's only about an hour of the set. I played for an hour, almost an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes or so. There's only like an hour that they sent me. So it starts a little bit after the beginning and ends a little bit before the end. But it'll give you a window into the live set world. So that was super fun. Before we get too far into this, I just want to do one quick plug if I can. I'm going to be on November 5th. We start the November cohort of my complete hardware performance system online course. So if you're interested in doing that, go ahead and get signed up now. And because you're watching this video right now, if you use the promo code ADE when you're checking out, you can get 20% off the cost of the course. And the course is a lot of fun. It's a video course with about 50 exclusive videos that are only in the course. There's twice weekly group Zoom calls where we do Q&As about the sections, the individual sections of the course. If you can't make those, they're recorded, so you can always watch them whenever. There's a 1 hour one-on-one during the month with me, so we can go over your gear. We can do a specific lesson on something, whatever you choose. And then once per week, you can send in a 10-minute video recording of yourself performing live, and I'll send you back email feedback on mixing and sound selection and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in the course, there's a link in the description down below this video. You can go to circolive.com/courses and get signed up. And again, if you sign up today and use the code ADE, you can get 20% off the course. So I would love to see you in there. It's a lot of fun. I already see a few people in here who've taken the course. I see James in the chat here. He's been through. So if you have questions and you want to ask about the course, feel free to ask those in the chat, and I'm sure those guys will be happy to jump in there. So anyway, let's talk just a little bit about some of the other things I saw at ADE. First of all, a couple of the events that I went to. I went to see Colin Benders with Megan Lieber and Pariah. I can't remember who else. At the Levenslang, which used to be a prison. It's kind of a cool venue. Really great spot, great sound, great place to see Colin Benders. It was a great modular techno set. He was like right in the crowd with people all around him, and it was pretty amazing. Then I went to see the Store event, which I've got my Store sweatshirt on today. Little plug for those guys. Absolutely unbelievably amazing as always. The Store event is always crazy good. And I went on the Saturday night because my event was on Sunday night. So on Saturday night, if you're not familiar with Store, it's a bunch of live hardware performers playing all together, kind of collaboratively improvising for 7 straight hours nonstop, without any rehearsal, without any kind of communication or roles or anything like that. They're all just kind of collaborating on making music live in front of a crowd for 7 hours. So it was pretty amazing. The lineup for that one was Fiak, Nene H, and Kink. And then Speedy J is kind of the conductor of the whole thing. So he was obviously, as always, a part of that. So it was very cool. It was completely inspirational. I was up in the balcony kind of nerding out, watching what everybody was doing. And so, yeah, it was a ton of fun. So, yeah, so if you have any questions about anything about ADE, just pop those in the chat. Happy to answer whatever. And in the meantime, I'm going to, oh, there's Robin, just popped up, speaking of store. How's it going, Robin? Good to see you. It was great to catch up with you, by the way, at ADE and get to hang out for a little bit. Robin and I went out for some fantastic ramen while I was there. A buddy of his restaurant that was absolutely amazing. So if you're in Amsterdam, go to the Vatan Ramen. It's amazing. It was really, really good. And of course, great to see you and the whole gang. So yeah, so we can kind of chat a little bit now about the setup that we got going here and kind of how I was using it for the event, because I know that if you're here, you're probably a gear nerd. So we can chat just a little bit about that. So, you know, basically you've got everything being controlled by the Oxy One. So this is kind of central clocking everything within the modular, clocking the Digitac 2, clocking the Blackbox. So really everything clockwise is coming out of here. Then it's also sequencing all of the voices of the modular, and it's sequencing tracks 9 through 16 on the Digitac 2 as well. Tracks 1 through 8 in the Digitac are being sequenced internally within that. And then the Blackbox, there's no sequencing going on. I basically just have it in it's almost like Ableton clip launching mode. So you basically just kind of touch a clip and it will launch that thing and loop it clocked to whatever you have it clocked to. So for this one, there's no sequencing or anything like that going on. It's just time stretched longer samples that are looping there. We'll talk a little bit more about what those are as we go on and kind of how I was kind of building tracks. So give you a little bit of insight into what you'll hear if you listen to the recorded live set that's on SoundCloud. So yeah, and then just really to quickly kind of talk a little bit through the modular really quick too. 1 through 8 on the Digitac are all drums, but it's all kind of hats, percussion, claps, things like that. The kick drum is coming from the battering ram module right here from Shockmod. I also have kick on track 1 here, but it's kind of as a backup more than anything else. Or if I want something secondary like a sequenced rumble, I can do that using this kick, but it's not generally the one I'm using. I'm using the one here just because it has a lot of control over kind of sound shaping of the kick while you're playing live. So I'll use just this one kick throughout the entire performance. Because it is so flexible, it's able to be modified all around. I can kind of show you really quick. So it can go from, you know, stuff that's like this, that's very super mellow, all the way to, you know, kind of much more aggressive here. And then you've even got a second drive channel. And then you can back this all the way back down to kind of more reasonable levels. So as you can see, it's got a ton of flexibility. So that's why there's just really one kick, because I can move it around and use it kind of any way I want to use it during the performance. So it's super flexible. So that's kind of the drum side of it. Percussively, most everything plays things percussively at one point or another, but the rest of it is kind of tonal percussion. So I use the Shockmod Archer's rig, which is normally supposed to be a hi-hat module, but I actually don't use it for hi-hats at all. It has a bunch of different engines in it, kind of like, you know, FM and sine wave and things like that. And you can sequence it. You can sequence pitch as well. So I use this for a lot of kind of leads and tonal percussion sounds rather than hi-hats at all. Then I have two modules up here, the Erica Synth Bassline and the Bastille Pizza. Those are really flexible modules as well, because they're fantastic for basses. So I use them a lot for bass lines, but they can also kind of flip to leads really easily as well. The bass line gives you much more of that kind of 303 sound of kind of crossover between a bass and a lead, which is great. And then the pizza is FM, so you can get some really great kind of metallic sounds and all sorts of different sounds from it. And what's very cool with this, with the pizza, is that it is the tuning knob on it can be set up to be an octave jump. And so what it does is that it really allows you the flexibility to go from bass to lead really quickly without having to worry about changing something in the sequencer or changing, key or whatever. So let's see, I'll bring this down just a little bit. So you can hear kind of FM, very, very FM-y bell sounds in here. But then if you shift this down, you can switch to bass stuff really, really easily. So the way I like to think of things when I perform is to think of them like in frequency bands, so that I don't have to worry much about signal processing. So what's great about something like the pizza is that if I need to fit something in, I can really quickly get it to the octave range that will fit into an open space in my mix that I have going live. So it keeps me from kind of overlapping things, because I don't have any real kind of, there's no EQing, I don't have any kind of compression or anything like that I can use to get things out of the way if I make the mistake of doubling them up and piling them on top of each other. So I try to keep things out of each other's way from the beginning, and having that kind of control over octaves and frequency bands really gives a lot of control for that. Those two voices, the bass line and the pizza, they each have their channel in the Erica Synths dual effects, so that I can give them some generally reverb. Sometimes I'll put delay on it, but for the most part, it's just to kind of fill out the sound with some reverb. Then I have the BIA from Noise Engineering, which is another one that's really great for the kind of tonal percussion type stuff. I don't even know what's in here, because this was all kind of left over from the last time I played. So you can see there's, again, a lot of variety with that. And then it's going through its own effect here, the FX8 XL, so that I can give it a little bit of a delay or reverb if I want to add some into that to just kind of fill that sound out just a little bit as well. Obviously, those are all going into the mixer here, and then I have two sends in the mixer. Send 1 is going to the Chaos Devices Causalin, which is a frequency shifter. So, and I have that set up to be pre-fader, meaning that the signal doesn't have to be live. So I can use, for example, that BIA signal, this one, even with the fader down, I can switch that to 1 and send it, and then I can frequency shift it in the Causalin. So and that's without that up. So then if I wanted to add it and kind of duplicate it with the original, so you can double up the sound so that you can come up with some more interesting layered sounds by sending it that way. The second send is going into the Endorphins Ghost, which is delay, reverb, filter. It's got a compressor, it's got a distortion, it's got overdrive, it has a sidechain input, all sorts of stuff. So I use this as a way to use what's in here going through the send to create some kind of atmospheric washes and more interest to what's going on there. So for example, if I was to take that same BIA sound that's pretty plain and send that to the Ghost, let's see here. And with the filter, you can then kind of sweep through frequency bands. And it can give you an additional voice that's kind of made up from the voices that already exist. And you can actually do a combination of both. I can send that BIA to the Koslin and then send the Koslin to the Ghost. And just gives you a bunch of different options for ways to create interesting sounds on the fly and have them all kind of work together because they're made from the existing sounds that are here rather than trying to have something else, making sure that it kind of fits in key, sequencing it separately. It's just made from pieces of that. And because they're on sends, you can send multiple things, for example, to the Koslin. So like, let's say we would send the BIA, this one, and the pizza. So if we send both of those to the Koslin in differing amounts, and again, that's pre-fader, so none of those sounds are up, and then they can be shifted here. Right. So it just gives you some different options of things that you can do creatively while you play to generate new, interesting sounds using what you've already got. And then kind of the last piece of this part of it is that everything, well, first of all, everything comes through the mixer. So the Digitac 2 is coming into the mixer. The Blackbox is also coming into the mixer. So the Digitac 2 is coming into a mix input, and the Blackbox is coming into its own channel. And so that way everything goes into the mixer. And then on the master send, I have that going out through the Oxy Meta, which is performance effects. So it's basically like the effects unit in a DJ mixer. So it gives you some really interesting things you can do, from very subtle stuff. Like, for example, if I was starting my set and I wanted to have, I wanted to have a drum, but not have it be kind of, not have it be completely taking everything over. I can do it this way. I can kind of filter the drum out, and then I can bring it back in when I want it to start and bring back in the low end. Or you can have it do much bigger effects like high pass, low pass filter. You've got like different, what do I say, like risers, looping effects, which are kind of like beat repeat effects, all that kind of stuff. So it does a lot of different stuff, which is very cool. And it makes for a very, very flexible piece of gear. I'm trying to see why. It's only taking one side. So, oh, that's why. I am missing a return. That's why. There we go. Now that makes more sense, I'm sure. Yeah, there we go. So being able to filter out like this, for example, bring things in. So you could start off something like this, having things filtered up as a way to begin a set, for example, and then you can bring that filter down and cut it back off again and have that come in. So master effects over the entire thing. Then if you want, you've also got the ability to, add resonance and do like more dramatic sweeps, or you've got riser effects that include reverbs, white noise as well. Ones that include like shepherd's tones. all sorts of things built into that, which makes for some interesting transitions and ways to bring things in and transition between sections, do build-ups and breakdowns. Sorry, all of that kind of stuff built into that effects module. So very, very handy to just kind of have that right there to use with whatever. Then Digitact, as I mentioned, drums, and then you have like tonal percussion stuff. Just see if I have the mixes up at all. Not really. Yeah, there we go. So these like 9 through 16. So they're all one-shot tonal things, and those are sequenced from in here in the Oxy One. So for example, if I was playing along here and I wanted to add in, let's say like one of the, so like B stabs, take it out, I don't know what that sequence is. Just add those in, shorten up my end point. There we go. And then if I unmute that, so that pattern that's coming out of channel 10 here is sequencing track 10 over here. So there's actually, if we were to go into that track, there's no pattern there at all. There's no sequence inside that at all. The sequence is coming from here, but I still have on that track, I still have full control over the sound itself. So again, it gives you the ability to easily sequence melodically from here in key, and you can do things with randomization. You can do all sorts of stuff within the Oxy, but then you still have all of the sound design effects and all those capabilities within the Digitact. So that's why I'm sequencing those tracks down here from the Oxy rather than internally, because this does a much better job of sequencing things melodically, whereas this does a much better job of sequencing, of parameter locking within a sequence, things that are where the sound is being generated inside the machine. That's very complicated to impact those things from the Oxy. So all the drums, I have sound design things that I wanted to do internally with parameter locks, like randomizing the decay on hi-hats, for example. I can do those with an LFO internally in here. It's much easier. But in order to sequence things melodically, it's much easier to do it from here. Just as an example, if we go back to that same sound here, if I go to that track that we're on here, so you can hear it's all just on one note, but I can go into the randomization function and I can randomize pitch, keeping the same rhythm, and it'll randomize within the key that I have preset. So if I hit this, and I can change the range, I have it set pretty low. I can bring it back down in the middle somewhere. So I can keep the same gate pattern, keep the same rhythm and the same groove that I like, but I can generate new kind of sort of random things on the fly, like it's random pitch, but not random gate. And if I don't like it, I can also always step back and go back to what I was on before. So there's undo and redo, which allows you to kind of step back and forth between those patterns that you've set up there. So it gives you a lot of flexibility with the sequencing using the Oxy One, and with the sound design using something like the Digitact 2, or you can, before I was using it to sequence the Syntact, because it had a lot of different voices as well. I've used it to sequence all sorts of different voices, just because anything that's kind of melodic or tonal, it's a great way to kind of keep things organized and keep some guardrails by starting off with the Oxy One and then kind of pushing it out to other stuff. So yeah, so that's what I've going with the sequencing bit. Then the let's see really quick here, the black box is kind of like the last piece of the setup, the last kind of missing link in everything that we're talking about here. And what I'm using the black box for, actually, if you saw the live stream I did right before ADE, I didn't have the black box, I had the Octatrack, and I was using that for longer time stretch samples. I decided, just because of space and travel, to be able to keep everything in carry-on luggage, I brought the black box for that instead of the Octatrack, because it's much smaller, even with the controller, because this is really thin and it fits in, kind of in the laptop sleeve of your backpack. So what I have going on here is, as I mentioned, these are all kind of set up as those one-shot clips. So before I would start, I would actually launch them so that they're launching in time. And then when I hit this, mute that again. Now those clips are all launched and going. Sorry if this reintroduces noise. I will try to fix that for next time, but I just want to show you how we're using the launch control here. So this is controlling these 8 faders, and then the middle 8 knobs are the volume for the 16 tracks here. And then these faders and the top line of faders are high pass, low pass filter. So I can kind of fit things into a mix the way I want to. And then I have these organized in groups of 4. So the first one is a sub. Turn this up here. First one is a sub in each section of 4. So I have a few subs that I can choose from. So just on this page, I have 4. The next set is atmospheres. So like background kind of textural atmospheres that kind of add these cool foundations to what you do. So a few of those. So those can be high pass or low pass filtered, so you can kind of use those wherever they really fit in what you're doing. And then the next section are percussion, or kind of percussion. Some of them are melodic, and some of them are just regular percussion stuff. So if I don't have a percussion voice available at the moment, I've got some to choose from. And then the final one in each group of 4 is something that I've recorded, some loops that I recorded using my studio modular, which you can kind of see right there over my shoulder. The modules that are either too big or take too long to dial in for them to be usable with for a traveling live performance case. So with those ones, I'll record things that I like, and I'll have those here. So I have a few things that I really liked that were as kind of like fallbacks. If I'm trying to write something really quick and I need something new, if I've got, if I have a voice that goes wrong and I need something really quick, I can use those as well. So it gives me a lot of things that I can kind of mix and match with all the drums that I can mix and match, with the voices that I can mix and match, and doing all of that stuff kind of added to the overall sound of everything. So as you can see, there's a lot of pieces and parts that go to it, and that's kind of the way that I do this. Everything has kind of a role. So these are, sound design and very performative live foundational drums, plus a lot of one-shot samples that I can trigger from here. So I can write melodies or bass lines or whatever percussion things, whatever on the fly using these voices, but from here where I have a lot more control over it. And then just as some things to fill out the mix in order to make things sound kind of full and finished and interesting. That's where all the longer samples come from. And as I mentioned before, I was using the Octatrack. The reason it's either Octatrack or Blackbox for me is that they can time stretch longer samples. And because I'm putting in loops here, I don't know how long those loops are. And I want to make sure that whatever I do tempo-wise or whatever, that this will follow from a time stretch standpoint. I was trying to do it in the Digitakt 2 because it has the new stretch mode. Where I ran into some issues is that with that, you have to have exactly perfect length loops in order to tell it what the length is, how many bars, so that it can divide it up and time stretch it. And the problem was some of the loops that I had recorded in were, longer or shorter than the optimal numbers that go in here. And with these, with the Octatrack and the Blackbox, it will time stretch without knowing the length of the sample. So because of that, I kind of pulled those type of samples out of the Digitac 2 and added back in a longer sample player in order to do that. Just because I could have made it work, but it was just a lot of brain damage to try to clip all those loops to exactly the right length so that I could, dial them in. And if they're off by the tiniest little bit, as soon as you start to change pitch, you'll start to get all these weird artifacts and it'll glitch. So it works amazing if you're sampling them directly into the Digitac 2, because you can set the sample length before you start sampling, and then you're gonna sample to exactly its preferred length, and then it will time stretch beautifully with no problem at all. But I was doing some of these where I was recording them here, some I recorded into the Octatrack, some I was recording into Ableton and then moving over here. So it was just not working out the way I wanted it to. So I ended up adding back in a device to play the longer samples. And the reason for the Blackbox is it works really well. It's great for this, and it's tiny, and it's really great to travel with. The other thing that's cool with the Blackbox too is when you want to kind of set things up or build out these groups of patterns in here, like if you're on the plane, you can just pop in some headphones and it's got a ton of memory in the SD card. So you can, I think I have a 256 gig SD card in here. So you can basically load in every sample pack, every track you've ever made, every stem, everything. And then you can go in and really easily build things out. So if you go into the preset mode, you've got like different presets, and then you just build out the preset to the pads of how you want it, and then you save it. And so you can do that from any of those folders of samples that are in there. So it's really easy to organize things as well. Where it gets a little complicated with the Octatrack, because you're like, I've got this many tracks, and then I'm going to use part 1 for this, part 2 for this, part 3 for this. Which engine am I using? Is it a flex machine or is it a static machine? Then you have to go into, there's a lot of button clicks to get into the file system and figuring out which one you want to preview them. So it's just really, really easy in the Blackbox, and I was very short on time and space. So it ended up being the winner in the time stretched sample player organizer category. So yeah, so that's where that was for. So let's take a look at the chat and see if there's any questions. If you have questions, feel free to pop those into the chat. I'm more than happy to answer questions about any of this, or ADE, or my course, or I don't know, life in general. I like coffee. So if you want to talk about coffee, I have my coffee here. In Bo's honor, I'll take a little sip of the coffee. Always got to have the coffee with you, right, when you play. So let's see. Yo from South Dakota. Hey, Mike, another alumni of the course. So if you have questions about the course, ask Mike and James. They're both in here. Yeah, noise. We got that sorted. The set I posted was fire. Thanks, James. It was a fun one. It was a lot of fun. It's it's always a little nerve-wracking. I think I've mentioned this before on these streams, but everything that I'm playing is improvised, right? So I don't have any prepared tracks. So like my sequencers, I blank them before I start playing. So after sound check and before I perform, I blank my sequencers. So anything that's being sequenced from here, so all of these voices and all of these voices are completely blanked out. I do keep some kind of foundational drum things like 16th hi-hats and, offbeat open hats, because I just know I'm going to use those and I don't want to, waste my time sequencing those. But anything that's really melodic or tonal or any of that stuff is all improvised in the moment, other than these kind of background pieces that I use for the samples for. So because of that, right before I play, every time I'm always kind of stressed out, because it's like, what are you thinking? You didn't prepare anything, and this voice in my head. But then once I get up and start performing, it all kind of becomes really fun, and the excitement of feeling and seeing and kind of vibing with the crowd and translating what's going on in the room with the crowd into the music that I write in the moment live for that crowd, see their reaction. From their reaction, I get more inspiration, and that kind of brings me back to writing more stuff. So there's a real interaction, and I love that, and that's for me the most exciting part of playing live. So it's stressful before I play, but once I get started and I get into 2 or 3 minutes in, it not only does that go away, but I remember like, oh, I love this. That's why I do it this way. I love this way of doing it, even though it is slightly more stressful than doing it other ways. So let's see here. Did I use the Heat Plus effects in the live set? Yes, I did. You can't see it, but it's right over there off camera. I just didn't have space in the frame for it, and it doesn't do anything. Like I don't mess with it during the set, so I figured it was kind of useless to show it. But yeah, I have a preset that I drive everything through. The Heat Plus effects is kind of my final thing before it goes out to the house. I was playing on some really, really good sound system, good sound systems while I was there. So having the extra saturation and low end drive was great because the subs were really good, and they went down low enough that low end drive was really a big plus to have out of there. And then of course saturation gives you a lot higher perceived volume, perceived loudness, without having to jack up the volume and clip things. So that for me is really important when I play on good systems. If the system's not great, it doesn't really matter because you don't hear those things anyway. So a lot of times, if I know I'm playing on a system that's not, that doesn't have really good low end, I won't even bring that box, and I'll just go straight out of my mixer into the house system. But because I knew the sound would be good there, I brought that along. So yes, I was using that. Looks and sounds dope. Thanks, man. Let's see here. Is this usually the amount of gear that you bring for a live set, or is it depending on the set usually? No, this is pretty much my live setup. I do swap things in and out every once in a while. So like this stays more or less the same, although I will swap voices here and there. There will be, tune in next weekend because there will be a relatively large change to this coming up probably by next weekend's live stream, if I can get everything built the way I want to by then. I'm excited for a new system, some new modules that I'm going to have coming in. So I'm very excited to have those coming back by the end of this coming week. So for next weekend, you'll see more cool stuff in this rig. So this stays more or less the same. I always have a drum machine. There's sometimes that I have used the analog rhythm in the past. It is a little bit big for travel, so I tend to use the Digitac, and especially since the Digitac 2 came out, just because it has so many more tracks, it allows me to have 8 full tracks of drums and another 8 tracks of melodics. So it's a lot of punch, a lot of flexibility and power and strength in a relatively small travel size. And then, like I said, the sample playing part sometimes is Octatrack, sometimes is Blackbox, but more often than not it's Blackbox, just because it's very easy and I don't use all that stuff all that much, so it doesn't need to be a really complex big machine. It just needs to kind of do the thing, that time stretch thing, which this does. So it's that's how I do that. So more or less, this is what I will bring all the time to a show. I did have also, I forgot to show this. I did also use this, the Ableton Move. I wonder if there's still battery in it. Ooh, no, it's dead. So I can't connect it right now. Well, I could, but I would get more ground noise. I use the Ableton Move just a little bit in the live set. I didn't even sync it because the MIDI sync is kind of really bad with the Move. It's probably the biggest flaw of it. But it sounds really phenomenal. So I used it to live perform some like ravey piano stabs and stuff like that. So it's very cool to play and be a playable thing. And I just did that on a whim. I had it with me, and I wanted to add that in and see if I could use it. And I used it a little bit. But for the most part, this, which you see here, is my my live setup. If you've watched these live streams or my videos over the years, you'll see that things have kind of come and gone. Most of them are still here in the studio, but this is kind of, I've gotten it down to a really manageable travel size with a lot of power packed into a relatively small footprint. So, yes, let's see here. James, what types of meta effects do you use in the live set? Primarily the filter, or do you switch it up? I mean, I use the filter more than anything, for sure. It's the, just like, I mean, it goes back to DJing. I'll use filters when I DJ a lot more as well. They're very handy to do a lot of different things. Like I said, you know, just starting off a live set with something like this. Just being able to start the live set here and kind of get people interested in what's going on, and then to be able to just take out that filter just with one button and bring in all the sub, all the low end of the kick and all that stuff. It's really handy to have things like that in your setup. I will also use, so let's see, just bring up some random stuff here. I do also use the riser quite a bit, which is a filter, but that includes white noise and a reverb and filter as well. So like if you add some some amount to it, I usually take out the kick before I use this because it doesn't sound great with kicks. But you can hear it kind of opens things up and washes them. I don't know how well you guys can hear that. Let me see here, just make sure that we are in a good spot. There we go. Give you a little bit more volume so you can hear that. And then I'll sometimes bring in the kick underneath it because you can't hear the kick because it's filtered, and then you can bring this back down. And it kind of brings things back in again. Sometimes I will use the delay as well. Again, it's more for kind of a build-up. So again, you can use those things. I use, like I said, the filter and the riser probably more than anything. Sometimes the gate, sometimes the delay. But those are the biggest ones that I find the most useful for me, for sure. The thing is, the type of music that I use, or the type of music that I do, it is not really conducive to big effects. Like I was using, prior to this, I was using the EasyBot performance template, which had these effects in it, and those were the ones I found myself using all the time. But because of the style of music, it doesn't, you know, it kind of loses the vibe I'm going for if you use a lot of like glitchy type beat repeat jumpy loop type effects. If you're doing drum and bass, if you're doing dubstep, if you're doing EDM, if you're doing stuff like that, all those effects are great, but I wasn't using them because they're not really conducive to this. What's great about the meta is that you can do some of those things, so if that's more your style, it would still be useful. But for someone like me, I can turn down the intensity and do things that are really, really subtle, which goes much more along with the style of music that I'm doing. So that's why I tend to do those. Let's see. How are you using the Novation MIDI controller? Any suggestions on how to avoid jump in parameter values? Yeah, I mean, I don't have issues with jump in parameter values because I keep it preset up. So what I have is there's 16 loops that play here in the black box, tracks 1 through 16. So fader and knob on this lower level is volume and high pass, low pass for the first 8. And then these 2 rows of knobs are volume and high pass, low pass for the next 8. And I have every one of the presets that I use for this type of performance set up that way so that if I change to the next preset, they're all still lined up the same way. And because of that, it's I tend to use the things, I'm not leaving a value and then changing to a new thing and then having it jump values. It will do that. And just, I don't really have that issue because that's not the way I'm using it. So I think if I was doing that, I would probably still have that. I would still have that, but it's just not the way I use it. So as you guys have heard me say before, I'm a big believer in don't make a mess that you have to clean up. So I don't set it up to use that way so that I have to worry about doing it or like fixing it later on, how to rectify the problem. So I just try to not have the problem in the first place and use things in a way that allows them to be used a little bit more where the fit is a little better in the way they're used. So let's see. Herrick, love your videos. Thanks, Olivier. So much information. Awesome. I'm glad you like that. I try to give as much information as I can. I'm, as Ricky Tina says, share the knowledge. Like I'm a big believer that the more people there are out there doing this and having a great time doing this, the more interest there will be, the more, joy it brings to the world, because this is a lot of fun. So I love to see people do that. And hey, Chet, thanks for the coffee. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Oh, the noise didn't come back in with the launch control. Awesome. So maybe it was just from powering it all up. New here, what course? So there's a link in the video description. Go to circlelive.com/courses. And I am taking signups right now for the November cohort, which starts November 5th. And get signed up now because it is starting to fill up. I would love to have you in there. It's video course plus group Zoom Q&A stuff plus one-on-one online lessons. It's email feedback of videos of your live performances. And it's really a full course that goes over how to, on whatever gear, it doesn't have to be this gear, on whatever gear, how to perform improvised live electronic music. So would love to have you there. If you're into it, check the link below, again, circlelive.com/courses. Let me, I just realized I didn't do the /courses. So go to circlelive.com and click on courses. That will help you. So let's see here. Buzzy says, have you ever seen that when you hit the randomize option in multi-track mode of the Oxy 1, multiple sequencers don't produce any notes? I'm not quite sure what you're saying. So I am in multi-track mode right now. So we can bring back our little thing here. So my multi-track sequencer is on 1. So if I go to 1 and I hit the track that I want to randomize, see these little yellow lights light up on the sides of the track that I'm on now. So I can change which track I go to by holding the sequencer number and then just going to that track. So if I go to this track, then all of these functions over here are going to work on that track. So if I go to the pitch change part, I can do this, I can do, and it will only change that track. It doesn't randomize all the tracks. It randomizes only the track you're on, and that's to give you the control. Because like, I don't want to hit randomize and randomize my kick, my percussion, and 7 different melodic notes all at the same time. That would just create a cluster. So this gives you the ability to randomize by track within the multi-track. So hopefully that answered your question. I'm not sure if it did or not. But if it's not randomizing the track you want it to, make sure you have it selected. So again, hold down the sequencer number and then just choose. And it actually, so you know, it doesn't have to be the first button. It can be anywhere, which is kind of cool. But I always use the first one just to kind of keep myself, you know, so I know where I am. But it'll have a different colored 2 little boxes here that will tell you which one of those sequences you're on. Okay, so hopefully that helped. Let's see, James, hardware performance course. Oh, thanks, James. You jumped in as well. James took the course. A couple other people in here took the course. So yeah, they'll be better at telling you what they thought of it than I will, because I was on the opposite side of it. They can tell you what you learned on the other side. Let's see. Oh yeah, that was the other part that I forgot to mention about the course, is that everybody who's taken the course is part of this online community. It's kind of like a private Facebook group, except it's through the software that I host the course with. And it's cool because every time there's a new cohort, that adds in a new batch of people to all the people that have taken the course before. And it's been pretty cool to have everybody kind of communicate with each other and get to know each other, share, you know, tips, share live sets that they're doing, you know, chat, get to know each other. So yeah, it's very cool. Tover, thank you very much. New Zealand dollars. So you're all the way from New Zealand. Yeah, put in the chat where you're from. I love always, I've said this before, I love always finding out where, where people are from that are tuning in. It's you know, it's fun. You do this in your basement in Colorado and Denver, and then you send this out to the world, and it's always interesting to see kind of where in the world people are seeing things from. So yeah, thanks. New Zealand, awesome. Awesome, awesome. I had a friend who was a ski instructor in New Zealand for years. He would go there during your winter and teach skiing here in Colorado during our winter. Let's see here. Most artful use of the riser I've seen. Awesome. Well, that's cool. Yeah, it's you have to kind of, you really have to play around with effects, whether it's in the meta or whether it's, you know, regular effects units, even on a DJ mixer. Getting used to using effects, they lend themselves better to different things. Like, for example, if you're using, like, let's say you have something, well, like this. So this is very percussive. If you were to use a delay with this, it sounds interesting, right? Where if you were to change that for something that's more, I'll just turn this all the way up here. So something that's less percussive, and then you use a delay on it. It gets kind of cluttered really fast, and it can kind of clutter up your mix. So again, it becomes important to mess around with whatever effects you're using with different types of sounds to figure out where they work the best. So like, for example, if I was using the Archer's rig, so this has some great percussive sounds, right? So this with a delay can sound really interesting, and you can change the, right? So that sounds much more interesting because it's a short percussive sound. Where if we go back to that longer sound, if I was to use something like the gator, the gate sounds much better when you have big washy sounds. Right? Whereas if I were to use something short and percussive with the gator, you don't get the same kind of effect, right? You don't get it's not as interesting an effect. So playing around with whatever effects you decide you're going to use, playing around with those with different types of sounds will help kind of guide you. So like I mentioned before, the riser doesn't sound really great with kicks. If you have a kick going and you use the riser and you turn it up, it kind of echoes too much, the reverb's too big, and it gives you too much going on. So I usually take out the kick while I'm doing other stuff. So all that other stuff sounds much better, and then I'll bring in the kick as I kill that effect. Right? So you're using the effect on the things that it sounds good with, and you're not using it on the things where it doesn't sound good. So anyway, that's how I think with effects. Thanks again, Chet and Tover. Appreciate that. Brooklyn, awesome. Lisbon, Portugal, sweet. Western Mass. I'm a New Englander too. I'm originally from Vermont, so I had an interesting East Coast accent at one point as well. Portugal, Massachusetts. Is that a city in Massachusetts? Because we had Portugal, then Massachusetts, or were you just commenting that it was Portugal and Massachusetts? Either way. Cool. Yeah, anybody else pop in? I know where a few of you guys are from. I know that Ed's in Houston. Can't remember where everybody else is. I think James is in Seattle or Portland, somewhere in the Northwest, I believe. Yeah, awesome. And again, if you have any questions on any of this stuff, feel free to pop them in the chat, or anything about ADE or music in general, or the course, or any of that stuff. Feel free to pop those in. Let's see, what else did I want to go over today? Oh, I did want to talk a little bit about, so I get asked this a lot, and I have been asked this a bunch in the last week. So I just wanted to bring this up. I get asked a lot if, as I'm improvising, when I'm performing, am I pre-listening to stuff? So when I originally got the WMD Performance Mixer, one of the main reasons why I got this one at the beginning, I mean, obviously it's a great mixer and it's kind of one of those standards that you see everywhere, but one of the reasons why I really leaned towards this was because it had a cue, very much like a DJ rig. So these buttons down on the bottom can cue different tracks, and then that cues them into a headphone output. So you can pre-listen to things if you want to. So I got it because I thought I was going to be doing that. What ended up happening was, anytime I would kind of put the headphones on and start writing something in the headphones, I really felt like it disconnected me from the crowd, and I would not notice that things were going on too long, or things were going, out of sync, or things were not fitting together, or whatever. And so I kind of felt like I disconnected from the performance. So I used that, I think, for one performance, and then I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. And I haven't used it ever since. So you can do it, and I have friends that do it. I know Travarsi, when she plays, she has in-ear monitors, and I think a lot of times she'll put them in so that she can do stuff, and then she pops them out so that she can be back with the crowd. And you could do the same with regular headphones as well. I know that Alex 106 does the same thing. For me, I just feel like it disconnects me from the crowd. And because of kind of the guardrails that I've set up within my system of, having this quantized to key, having things, looping, having things, sound design things that I'm very comfortable with, I'm not so concerned with that. So I will just chuck things out there and then adjust on the fly. I'm big at kind of throwing them out there to the world and then kind of adjusting in the moment. So like if we were kind of going along with something here. So for example, this pattern that's coming from the Archer's rig, that's the second sequence up here. So if I take those all out, I can look and say, okay, here's my kicks. I know where they are. And before I even bring that up, I can say, I want to put these in these kind of areas that are in between kicks, so they're not falling exactly the same, and that'll give me some sort of a different rhythm. And if I hold this down and I turn the notes, I can change the note of that up or down. It tells me here what the note is, and it will do only the notes that are in the key that I have pre-selected. So I have this in Phrygian E, so if I change these notes, I know that they're always gonna be in key. So I know this is gonna go from root note up, because I just moved it up, back to the root note, and I can kind of see where the rhythm is. So I don't have to listen to it. I know more or less where that is. Then if I look at the voice that it's coming in, I can say, okay, I can take the decay all the way down, so I know it will be short. I can take the effect and the filter all the way down, so I know that it won't be filtered high and the effect will be non-engaged. So then when I bring it in, I know more or less what it's gonna sound like. It's gonna be this pattern with root, up, root, and it's gonna be a short percussive sound, right? So we bring it in and it's, right? So I know more or less before I put that in, and I know it's gonna be in key because it's already quantized to key. So then once I have it in, then I can do things that are fun to play with this. I can open up the decay. And then I can filter this up. I can engage some of the effects. I also know, by the way, with this, whichever engine this is on, so this is on the bell engine, so I know it's going to be more or less a bell tone when it comes in. But if I was to change that, this is a sine wave, so I know it's going to be more or less the sound of a sine wave when it comes in. Or if I change it to the noise, it's going to be a noise sound, right? Or if I change it to the FM one, I know that this is going to be a frequency modulated sound. So right? So you can figure out more or less what things are going to sound like before you bring them in. When you have guardrails built into your setup, you know it's not going to sound horrible, right? It's not going to come in and be totally out of key or something weird, because you've got those things that are just enough control so that you can keep things being random, but random with guardrails. So for me, that's a really important key to the way this is all kind of set up to work together. Seattle Burbs, that's right, James. Let's see. Chet's being a wicked funny guy. Wicked funny, that's very New England. Sounds like a Dunkin' Donuts commercial. Notice that the syntax has been MIA for quite some time. Do you still use it? I do. It is, change this. It is right there. So yes, right there. So yeah, it's still in my studio. I do still use it. But I've been so focused on these live sets because I had a gig right before ADE. I had a demo at ADE, another, my bigger performance at ADE. So I was really focused on that, and it's not in my live setup anymore. I was using it because in that format of the Digibox, it gave me 12 voices, which gave me a lot of flexibility. And I was using it the same way I'm using these voices. So I was sequencing it from the Oxy and just using those as voices and building kind of like kits of voices, sound palette wise, and then improvising on those from the Oxy. When the Digitact 2 came out, when I was using the Syntact like that, and then I had the Digitact 1 as 8 tracks of drums. When the Digitact 2 came out, I was able to still keep my 8 tracks of drums up here, and then have these 8 tracks be voices, basically. So they're not synth based, they're sample based, obviously, but they're all one shots. So it's very much like having a synth voice, and especially with the workflow, you still have a lot of the same kind of synth control with filters and amp envelopes and things like that you have in the synth workflow. So for me, it was a way to cut one box out of my travel setup so that I was able to kind of fit everything into my carry-on luggage. So it was really a function of space, and I just didn't need these 16 plus another 12, so that's why it's out. It's not because I didn't like it. It was because this allowed me to do drum one-shots and melodic voices, where I wasn't using the Syntac for drum shots at all, because for things like cymbals and stuff like that, I prefer to use samples instead of synth engines. Kicks are great synth-wise, but cymbals not so much, for me at least. So yeah, let's see. Random thought. Remember when Speedy J did those stay-at-home sound system streams collaborating with artists worldwide? I'm trying to figure out how he synced MIDI and audio from across the globe. I can tell you how he did that. There is a free software that is called Ninjam, Ninjam. And what it does is via the internet, you have one person in your kind of room that you set up who will be the master clock, and then you can send out clock via Ninjam. You can open Ninjam as I think you have to open it as a plugin in a DAW, and then you can MIDI sync from that. And what it does to help control latency is instead of trying to reduce the latency down to 0, it increases the latency up to a known quantity. So what it will do is the latency is 1 bar. So the master clock, whoever is the master in the whole thing, is 1 bar ahead of everybody else, and everybody else is exactly the same. So you can set it up. It lends itself to music like, hypnotic techno and stuff like that, because you're not doing like really quick cuts and breaks and things that have to be timed. So you can be a little bit more gradual with your changes, with your flow that you've got going on. And because of that, you can sync up with other people and play. And it's free. It was originally set up as kind of like rooms where non-electronic musicians from around the world could play. And so like you would have you go into some of the rooms and it'll be like jazz guitar players with jazz drummers and jazz bassists. And you can actually join rooms and play along with people, or you can set up private rooms where people can't join in, and that's what they were doing with the Stay Alone sound system. So that is how they had it set up. Ninjam is the software, and it works. We've tried it a couple times with some friends of mine. It's a little complicated to set up. You have to be kind of a computer nerd to do it, but it does work. And yeah, so that's how they did it. And that actually turned into the store events. So they were doing those during COVID. And that whole idea was that people were jamming together live and improvising along together. And then as soon as COVID ended and they were able to kind of get people together in the same room, that's where the store event came from, was to kind of pull everybody together into one room, MIDI sync them together, and jam live in front of the crowd. So it was a great beginning to something very, very cool and tons of fun to watch. So anyway, that's how they did it. If you're keen to do it yourself. Feel free to jump in with any other questions here too. We've got the questions have slowed, but that's cool. Happy to show some more stuff in the meantime. I have a new view, by the way. For those of you who have watched my streams, I have a new view. So you can see this way as well. So I can wave to that camera over there. Anyway, here is, let's go back to this one. You're welcome. Yeah, it is a cool concept. It's funny because I love the way they looked at it in a really different way. You think like latency, the idea is to reduce it down, but it works just as well to sync if you increase it to a value that's known. Then you can still do it. So, and increasing latency is really simple to do. So for them to be able to do that was very, very cool. It was very, very interesting. Brattleboro, Vermont. Awesome. I'm originally from Waitsfield, Vermont, and my dad's from Bennington, Vermont. So we are Vermonters as well. That's why I mentioned I was a New Englander as well. Cool. So yeah. So again, back to the live setup here. A couple things that I mentioned before that I was really enjoying, that kind of came organically out of the performance in Amsterdam was, first and foremost, the things that I was doing with the Archer's rig. Finding some new things to do with the effects, with certain sounds. Let's go back. There's just so much flexibility with the sounds. And then you do something fun, like you start to add this to the ghost. So you can hear there's a ton of flexibility within just that one voice. And again, that's just one sound engine on one voice. If I switch that up. And everything that you're hearing in that wash is all just that same Archer's rig signal going through the ghost. So again, just to let you know what you're hearing, it's kick drum. The percussive stuff is coming from the Archer's rig, and that's going through the ghost. And then you're hearing two looped samples from the Blackbox. One is a sub and one is an atmosphere. So the sub is atmosphere, just to give us some sort of a foundation in the background. The atmosphere, I filtered it up a little bit because there's already a lot in the high mids. So I didn't want that duplicating and kind of muddying up my sound. So I filtered this up a bit. So with that, this is all you're getting from that. So that's everything that's coming from here. So here it's just the sub and just that kind of background atmosphere sound that's filtered up. And then again, you just add back in those other pieces. That's the ghost. If I'm gonna bring a kick in from a break, I always like to kind of filter it up first. Then you can bring in the kick underneath, so you only get the transient, so people can hear what's coming. There's some tension that builds up. So you can hear the kick coming back, but you don't actually hear the kick yet. Add some resonance to it. And then when you drop it in, you get the low end of the kick and the sub both come back in at the same time. And it gives you back that kind of power. So you can create the tension by taking away the low end. And people know something's coming. You can hear the tempo of the kick, so you kind of, you're already starting subconsciously to count to get ready for a drop as it comes back in. I always like to also increase decays to build more tension. And then when I drop down in, not only will I take the filter off, but I'll shorten that decay way back up again. And it gets you kind of back into the groove again. So, some of the ways to combine the functionality of having, a decay knob that's really easily accessible, plus having effects that are really easy to get to as well. Also, when I was designing my rig here, I purposely put the effects all the way on the right side, so that way I can be doing stuff with my other hand while I'm using this, and it keeps me from crossing things over while I'm trying to get to stuff. So again, the kind of the layout of your case is really important too, the way you're going to use stuff. We haven't really even talked about hats yet. That's another thing where I'll bring this up to build tension. To do a small break, this is a lot longer, but I'll do a small break, and I'll use that to cover introducing, let's say, a ride, when I bring this back up. Or you can also bring in closed hats as well, which is pretty interesting. So as you can see, there's a lot of little subtle pieces and parts that add together to make kind of the full thing. And for me, keeping your live performance setup flexible enough so that if you get an idea and you're like, oh, I could really use a hat. Well, I know where that is. Oh, I could really use something percussive. I know where that is. Oh, I could really use a bass line. I know where that is. Oh, I need an atmosphere. I know where those are. So keeping everything in kind of an organized way so that it's easy to get to in a loud, dark, strobe lighty, smoky, having a couple of drinks environment makes it so that it's much easier to kind of let the inspiration for whatever you're writing in the moment kind of flow out of you if you know where everything is. Because you can just kind of jump in and go, oh, this is easy. I know where that is. I don't have to stress about, okay, what bank am I on? And okay, in that bank, where's the hi-hat? Is it here? Oh, it's not that. Okay, wait, maybe it's that. Oh, it's not that. Oh, that's not the sound I want. So keeping that stuff really simple. With my kits, for example, in the Digitact, these 1 through 8 are always the same. So I always know where they are. Like the closed hats are always on 5. Open hats are always on 6. Ride is always on 7. A tom is always on 8. They may not be the same, closed hats, open hats, rides, toms, but they're always in the right place. So that while I'm playing, like I did right there, if I say, oh, I could use a cymbal, I could use a ride, I know that I just reach over and I engage track 7 and there will be a ride there. And if it's maybe not the perfect ride or if it's not exactly the right thing, I can always go in and shape that sound within the engine itself. Or I can, let it go if it sounds great, or I can bring in something different, or I can adjust volume or whatever, but at least I know exactly where everything is. You'll notice also I have everything labeled. Another good idea if you're doing live performances in a dark nightclub is to keep things labeled. So even in my mixer, I more or less know where everything is, but it's always nice because you can't always see like which track is this. So to just have on here, I know this is kick, I know this is bass line, I know this is pizza, BIA, Archer's Rig, Blackbox, Coslin, Ghost. So I know what everything is here when I'm gonna bring it in. Same thing over on this side. So I have like kick and Archer's Rig are labeled here. And then 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 are all those tracks over here. So I know what's what. So I know that if I do something on track 12 here, it's gonna be track 12 here. So I've labeled it in a way that it makes sense in a noisy, dark room so that I can keep everything focused. Same thing on the launch control. Like I said, it's sub, atmosphere, perk, and then like a hook or a loop of something from the modular. So they're in groups of 4 and it says sub 1, like S1, A1, P1, H1, S2, A2, P2, H2. And in here they say the same thing. So I always know where everything is. Another thing that I like to do as well is if you notice down here below, I have a piece of tape along the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. I'll push that forward a little bit. So there's a piece of tape along the bottom where I have the divisions of the 4 bars, and this is mostly for kicks, but it's also for other sequencing rhythms where I like them. And I put lines where the divisions are for the every 4 beats. They have a little plus here in the middle, but I couldn't always see that in the dark. So I added this down here. Then if you notice these dots and squares, so there's like dot, circle, square. I don't know if you can see that or not, but those are for different drum patterns. So I like to mix up things. So obviously 4 on the floor is super easy. I just put it to, wherever, I put my hand over here so you can see them all. So it's like 4 on the floor is simple, right? You know where that is. So if I bring this up, right? But there's some times where I might want to kind of break that up. So a lot of times what I'll do is I will shorten my end point. So I'm only using this first part. It's a lot easier to do breakbeat stuff when I do it like that. And so if I want to use one breakbeat style that I like is this dot one that's here. So if I just put my steps where the dots are, I know that's one pattern that I particularly like. And then there's another pattern that I like, which is this one. And then there's another one I like, which is this one. So I have those marked with, it's like my own stupid little system, but like one pattern is dots, one pattern is circles, and one pattern is squares. So then I can be like in a dark room when I'm not sure where the lines are, whatever, and I don't want to just kind of screw around. I want to be able to switch to something quickly. I can do this, and I can really quickly go from 4 on the floor to a breakbeat like this. So it's very easy to switch back and forth if you've given yourself some little like markers or notes. So again, that's a way for me. These are patterns that I particularly enjoy. So I will mark those down and use those as kind of go-tos. That doesn't mean that I don't change that up. So there's a fair amount of times during a performance where I will actually just kind of make stuff up, where I'll be kind of cruising along. I'll bring in a hat so you can, sounds better with a ride, I think. Maybe both. So you can put them together. It's the flexibility of being able to mix and match and combine. So sometimes it's fun to just kind of, just mess around. So you can do those ones that are fun, but have those go-tos, right? That are the ones that you like. Right? It's always have those things that can help you in that kind of stressful, tight, nervous, hot, dark, flashing light situation. It's something that I mentioned in my course is that I call it the 50% rule, that you will always be 50% dumber when you're on stage in front of people. Meaning that with the lights flashing, after a few drinks, with, in the dark, with the pressure of the crowd, with the nerves of the event, with, the loud noises, all of those things are kind of sensory overload, and they take away your sharpness. So there's things that you can do in your studio that that will be very complex, kind of complex moves and changes and whatever, that you won't be able to do live on stage because it's just too much, and you'll kind of trip and stumble, and that's where you make mistakes. So setting everything up, planning to be 50% dumber, means that when you're there, you can kind of nail everything. So if you want to change up, from a 4 on the floor kick to a breakbeat kick, you can do that if you've given yourself some markers. Or for some people, they don't need the markers. Like they're very much drummers, and so what beats they go on. It's better for me that I just have these things. I know certain things that I like for bass lines, for example, so I don't have to have the markers. But with drum beats, I want to make sure that I kind of hit them exactly the way that I want to. And so that's why I've kind of made these little markers for myself. But again, it's totally up to you, and whatever you find that works for you is what you should do. So let's check out the chat. Hello, this setup looks comprehensive. It is. It is pretty comprehensive because it has synths, samples, one-shot samples, longer samples, has a really, really, really playable, usable, easy to control yet very deep sequencer. And it has a lot of control over volume levels for everything. So like even within the Digitact, I usually have it set on the mixer page. So that way I know, like when I start a show, all of these on this, so like these lower row melodic ones, I have those all at 0. So if I start to play and I accidentally, unmute one or bump it while I'm playing, something won't just jump in and then so I just unmuted track 10. So now I know I can go over here onto the mixer page to track 10 and I can fade that in. Right? So I can fade that in or out. And so that's why I leave those. It's funny, I was doing a live stream with EasyBot in his studio once, and we were talking about that. I turned on my gear, and that was the first thing he noticed, that all my volume faders were at 0. And it was the first major difference between the way he plays and the way I play, because he's playing a song that he's already kind of arranged out and prepared. So he already has all those levels set for every single part in the song so that it sounds exactly the way he wants it to. For me, I have no idea how I'm going to use any particular element, so I keep it at 0 so they don't accidentally come in and make random noise and, you know, kind of mess up what I'm doing. So I will leave those at 0. Now, that said, on the other page, on the drum side of it, so the 1 through 8 track, those are already leveled. Again, because I already know what they are. I know what the sound is, and I know based on where I have kind of my volume set here, my you know, how everything is kind of gain staged together. I know that, you know, if I have a kick there, right? So I know if I have all of these elements in here, I know that if I then add in a ride, for example, I want it to be at the right level when I bring it in, because I'm not going to fade that in. So I might just bring that in. So it's at the level where I want it to be, or the hat, or sorry, open hat or closed hats. I have those already kind of set to the level where I want them to be. So they're more of a constant to the full mix. Same thing with things like claps. Whenever I use claps, I tend to use them much more dynamically for really short periods of time. So I want them to be a bit louder than everything else. So that's why that's slightly louder. I might even turn that down just a little bit. And I have those set up with fills. Same thing with the percussive elements that are in here. I have a couple of different percussion elements, and I've got those leveled to where I want them to be. Or this one. Same thing, if I take out the sub here, you can hear the toms better. Do I not have, oh, I didn't put anything on the toms, that's why. That higher end sound you're hearing is just the ghost coming back in, filtered up, and that's taking the pre-fader signal from the Archer's rig. So there's no Archer's rig playing, it's just the signal going to the ghost. You're only getting the wet signal, and then you can change the filter position. And it ends up sounding like an entirely different synth or different voice, even though it's coming from one of the voices that's in here that's not even engaged right now. There's no volume on that right now. So if I was to bring that up, so that's the signal that this ghost wash is coming from. So if I take that out and I make changes here, it will change the signal in the ghost. So whichever synth engine you're sending through that effect, you can affect it, whatever's coming out of there, by changing the parameters of the initial sound engine. So it gives you, again, a lot of flexibility. This sounds like a whole other synth, but it's not. It's a synth that's not even playing right now within the mix, and it's just going through these effects. So again, you can hear a lot of flexibility. Sorry, just kind of get lost in it sometimes. But yeah, any other questions about anything in the setup or anything with the course or ADE or any of that kind of stuff? Happy to answer any of that for any of you guys. Other gear, obviously there's a lot of stuff here in the studio that you can see in the background. Happy to chat about whatever. But yes, so this is the live rig as it sits today. As I mentioned though, there will be one pretty dramatic change coming within the next week or so, hopefully by next weekend, when I live stream next weekend. And then I think an even bigger change coming sometime within the next month. So that should be exciting. I'm very excited to see. Anyway, let's see here. Sounding good. Thanks, Paul. Sorry if I missed this. What role is the Launch Control XL suiting? It is controlling volume and filter for the 16 tracks in the Blackbox. 8 volumes, 8 high pass, low pass filters. And then this row is 8 volumes and 8 high pass, low pass filters for the next 8. So that gives me 16 volumes and 16 filters that I can use, all controlling the stuff that's within the Blackbox. One of the really cool things about the Blackbox is that it has a USB host. So you can just plug the launch control directly into the back of this, into the USB host in the back. The Blackbox power also powers the launch control and it connects right away. And it has MIDI learn. So it's really super fast to say, I want this parameter learn, and then just move the knob and it will do it for you, which is super, super handy. So like, sorry, I wasn't showing you this as I was saying. Volume, filter, going up those and controlling those 16 tracks. And yeah, so it's really easy. If you go into, so let's say you go into track 1, and you go into info here, you've got all these different parameters that you can control. So if I want the level to be controlled by this, you just hit level so that you're on that, go to info again and click learn, and then move this. And now it learned it. So now this is controlling the level of track 1. And you just do the same with each of the tracks. So this with filter, and you've got a lot to choose from. So you've got ADSR envelopes that you can control. You have filter, resonance, pitch. You've got effects by channel as well that you can control. So I choose, just because of the most useful things for me, I choose to use level and filter as my 2 things per channel, and then have another set up here. So yeah, anyway, been eyeing the Blackbox and I love the way you're using it. May have to pick one up. Thank you. Yeah, I'll credit where credit's due. The way I'm using it, including how to set up everything with the level, or sorry, with the MIDI learn, and also using the Launch Control XL. It's all a Ricky Tinez thing. I watched a video of his probably a year and a half or so ago now, maybe even 2 years ago now. And he was setting up the Blackbox like that with the Launch Control. I think it was in a video about sampling stuff from a modular into the Blackbox. And then he was using this and showed how easy it was to set up. And it was funny because I had the Blackbox, but I was using it and I was trying to control everything. So you have to go into each page and then go change the filter. Go into each page, adjust the volume, or go to the main page, select, and then volume. So there was a lot of kind of button presses and menus and stuff. And seeing how easy it was to set up the launch control, I just went that way. And thanks to a video that Ricky did, and it was great. And so now I use it that way all the time. And I just use it in the pad mode. I mean, there's a keys mode, so you can play it. There's a sequencer as well. So each of the 16 tracks can be a sequencer as well. So you can sequence it from other things. I'm just not using any of that stuff right now. There's a song mode. You've got effects per track, actually 2 effects per track. There's a mixer mode where you can control this from here. I prefer this. And then obviously the presets, so you can go in and save groups of sounds. So again, as I mentioned, so if I load a different set of sounds here, I'll just launch these all so you can hear them when I play. This is now controlling this bank of sounds. It's still sub, atmosphere, perk, and then kind of hook or whatever. And it allows me to still control it the same way. I have the sound bank set up exactly the same as the other one, but the sub is a different sub. The atmospheres are different. The perks are different. And the loops are different. Different sub, atmosphere, perk, hook, sub, atmosphere, perk, and hook, and another sub, another atmosphere, another perk, and another hook. So again, it's very easy to just go, okay, I've used these, or I'm not finding what I'm interested in, or I want to try something different, or I want to change it up, or maybe I'm playing a really long set. I played for an hour and a half, and I used I think only 4 sounds from one bank. So let's say you're playing for 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever, and you wanted to have a whole bunch of different things. All you have to do is just go into preset, change to the next one, hit load, and now it's ready to go. You just launch the clips by pressing on them. Now they're all going in time, and now I can bring up. Right, so it's all those same controls. So once you have it set up, and once you've figured out kind of your methodology for how you want it to be laid out and be organized, it's pretty easy, because then you can always keep everything in the same way. You can label things, and every time you set up a new preset bank, you can set it up using that same kind of convention of where everything is. And it just takes a lot of thought. You should see my notes. I have notes. I was trying to figure out different ways to set it up so that it made sense with what I was going to need to use to perform. And I finally kind of arrived at this way, because these are the 4 most common categories of things that I would want to include. That final one, that kind of this one, that can be, I have it labeled in here as hook, so that can be a melodic thing recorded from the modular, or it can also be vocals. Sometimes I have vocals on there, and you can rename each thing within the black box. So I'll just rename it as a vocal. It'll still be in the same position, so I'll know what it is, but it'll launch something else. It's a vocal hook instead of a melodic hook. So that way, if I have, other things that I want to put in there, I just kind of make sure that they all stay within the same kind of organizational structure, just like my kits, just like things like that. So I know where everything is. Again, 50% dumber when you're performing live. So set up your rig so that you can be 50% dumber and still make decent music. So that's the whole methodology behind it. Hey, what's up, Chris? Another former student here, FX Music, another alumni of the course, which gives me a sec just real quick to talk about the course again. Please sign up if you're interested. We're just about to start the next cohort. There's a few spaces available. I have a discount code right now if you're watching this live stream. So because this is the ADE live stream, if you use ADE at checkout, it'll save you 10% off the cost of the course. The cohort's a month long, but the videos and the online group, the private group, you have ongoing access to those. It's not just for the month, but during the month we have our group calls, one-on-ones, email feedback on your recordings of your live performances, and all of that stuff. So we've been talking about a bunch of stuff here today, but this is kind of scratching the surface. The course is this, but in a much more detailed way that talks about not only what I'm doing, but how to do it, how to set things up, how to select gear, how to design your rig, all the way through how to improvise, how to structure melodies, how to design percussive sounds, how to design a lot of sound design stuff. Once we do, we get into like through the meat of the course, where we've gone through the bits about how to actually do this stuff. The last part of the course is about some kind of theory about improvising, ways to do that, different ways, how to promote and market yourself, how to get gigs, what to bring to a gig, what are some things that can potentially go wrong, what's the etiquette for performing and sound checking and doing that stuff with other performers, how to travel with gear, a lot of stuff that you don't see other places. So I wanted it to be pretty comprehensive. So if you're interested in performing live out, you can do that after watching this course. And if you just want to learn how to improvise and play your gear in a way that's more fun and less kind of structured, but you get to kind of like jam on it, the course is good for that too. There's been quite a few people who have taken the course who don't perform live and who have no aspirations to perform live. They just wanted to get more comfortable with their gear, design a rig that was fun to play, and just perform at home for yourself. So it doesn't have to be, performing in a big festival or whatever, although this can definitely help with that. But it can be for if you're just interested in learning your stuff a bit better and getting more comfortable playing it, and some things that you can practice on your own. I just saw that Christopher just mentioned in here, he still comes back to the videos. And that's one of the things too, is that because you have ongoing access, I find that happens with a lot of the students, is they'll do the course, they'll learn a bunch, then they'll practice a lot, they'll learn new things, and they'll say, oh, what was that thing? Maybe I should go back and review that. Go back and rewatch that portion of the course, that video. There's almost 50 videos. Actually, there's more than 50 videos now that I think about it. And all those videos are exclusive to the course. So they're not any videos that I've posted on YouTube or any of that stuff. It's very much structured to a real organized system for how to perform improvised music on hardware. So hopefully we'll see some of you in the course. As I mentioned, jump in there and sign up today. And if you use the code ADE at checkout, it'll save you 20%. So I'd love to have you on there, and hope to see as many of you as possible. If you heard about it on the live stream, send me a note when you sign up that says you heard about it on the live stream. I would appreciate that. Cool. Any other questions we have for today? Any other questions or comments or thoughts or anything about the rig, the setup, ADE, the course, any of that stuff? Because if not, I think we'll probably call it there. I haven't decided yet, I may actually live stream tomorrow as well. So if I do, jump on and I'll see you then, because I have a few other things that I wanted to go over that we didn't touch on today, but it would be fun to do that. And maybe a bit more music tomorrow. Jam a bit more and get some input from you guys on what I'm playing. Could be a fun way to do it. So anyway, that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. Appreciate the tips and coffee and things that people bought on there. It's definitely a huge help. I'm doing my best to supplement my income with things like courses and things like YouTube, although it's not my main gig. So I do appreciate that. And if you find some value in what I do, go ahead and do that. Subscribe to this. Check out the course. I'd love to have you on there. And there's also links down below that are affiliate links. So you can go to Zounds to get a lot of different hardware gear. They don't do modular, so there's a link also to Perfect Circuit that's an affiliate link for modular. If you're interested in Oxy One, there's an affiliate link down there for buying the Oxy One directly from them, and you save 5% if you go through that. And obviously any of those affiliate links that you use to buy stuff definitely helps me out. There's also a Patreon if you're interested in that as well. A few different tiers of that. It's only $1 if you want to be in like the kind of main Patreon, and that includes Discord and all of that stuff, which has been a lot of fun. We also have there's also a tier where we do every Saturday morning we do a Zoom call together. We did it this morning. It was cool. chat about all kinds of stuff, and it's a much smaller, kind of more personal environment. You can ask individual questions, and you know, we nerd out about gear and talk about stuff that's coming out and things like that. And then there's another level of the Patreon that includes all of those, the Saturday morning group chats, plus it includes one 1 hour one-on-one per month. So go ahead and check that out at Patreon as well. So yeah, that would be awesome. I appreciate the support. Thank you guys for tuning in, watching the channel. Crazy, we just recently went over 10,000 subscribers, so that's blowing my mind, but it's I do appreciate it. I do appreciate all of you guys, and thanks very much.